Welcome back. Let's talk about processing some more. We said that a computer program is a series of instructions how to get data in, how to process that data, and how to get data out again. And we have this analogy with a cooking recipe. If you remember a cooking recipe, I said that was basically a series of instructions that you take step by step, one by one. You start at the top, you follow by the next step, third step, and so on. And if you follow it, you will have a very good chance of getting the result, getting the dish, getting the meal that you were supposed to be getting, right? But the important thing here to realize is that a cooking recipe is always followed step by step by step. You can't really mix the things, or can't skip any steps in order to be quicker. It usually means that you will screw up the dish, right? And that's where the analogy to a computer program is actually breaking, or that's different. A computer program is not always followed step by step, always in the same order. And it couldn't be. If you think about it, my favorite example, the ATM machine, right? The cash dispenser. If you enter the PIN correctly, then you can enter the amount and then you can get the cash out. But it actually matters whether you entered the PIN correctly or not. Because if you didn't enter the PIN correctly, you wouldn't want anybody to get the cash out, right? You would actually want to be shown an error message, meaning, hey, PIN is incorrect, try again, right? So if we sort of ignore that try again for now, let's just say you've got one try and either you enter the PIN correctly or not, you've got a condition there how the program continues. If the PIN is entered correctly, then you can dispense the money and you can withdraw it and you can update the account balance and everything. But if that's not the case, so if it's entered correctly, then do one thing. Else, if that's not the case, do something different. Okay, we've got the two different kinds of branches there, as we say in programming. It's not always followed step by step by step. At some point, we are at the condition, right? And if the condition is correct, if it's positive, then we continue with one part of our program. If it's not correct, if it fails, if it's negative, then we continue with a different path in our program. And the two paths then can join together at some point. That's not the point. But the important thing here is that it's not a fixed list of instructions that's always followed in the same way, no matter what. We've got a way to program conditions on certain input data that have to be met in order to do one thing in our program, or else we do something else. And regardless of the programming language, you've got ways to express that conditions. A typical thing that you may have heard already is actually using the words that I just used before. If condition, then do something, else do something else. That's called the if-then-else statement, or the if-then-else conditional. And that's something that you have in all the programming languages that there are. And it's important to understand that, we're writing computer programs as software developers, and the computer program is a series of instructions. But at some point, we can branch off. We can check for some condition and only do one thing if the condition is true, and do another thing if the condition is false. So again, I invite you in your daily life, if you're interacting with any kind of electronic equipment, think about what's the input data then that you're using there, that's being entered, that's taking place, and then what are the conditions that determine how the next step is going to take place, how the output changes. What happens if you enter the PIN incorrectly? What happens if there's not enough balance in your account if you try to withdraw the money, right? So think about that in your daily life when you're interacting with computer programs at some point, in some way or another. What are the conditions, and what changes if the condition is met or is not met? And it's also important to understand that it's easier to think about it that way, that you only have two outcomes. Either the condition is false or it's true, right? Of course, there might be more complex examples, but if you break it down, maybe you can think about it. Well, what's the simplest condition that I can think of? Like, for example, in the PIN example, if the ATM, if I enter the PIN incorrectly, what happens? If I have entered the PIN correctly, okay, then the program continues. But then if the account doesn't have enough balance, what happens? And if it has enough balance, what happens then? Okay, so think about that in your daily life. What are conditionals that you recognize and that you interact with in the programs that you're using, just from a user perspective? What's going on there underneath?